Okay, listen, I'm not any more excited to talk about Trump than any of you are. These videos don't perform very well. Oh well. It's the intersection of Trump and trans is what we're going to talk about real quick. So apparently, a few weeks ago, Trump was at a Moms for Liberty meeting, a conference in Washington, D.C. This is from Aaron in the Morn. And he expressed extremist views on trans people, which are divorced from reality. I guess he made several different comments, but there's like one in particular that's kind of the highlight of this. And I'm going to, I think there's a little video. And so let's see the little video rather than reading just verbatim what Aaron wrote.
Things that almost nobody in this room wants, who I think 85–90% of the country doesn't want if they actually.
I absolutely agree.
But the transgender thing is incredible. Think of it. Your kid goes to school and comes home a few days later with an operation. The school decides what's going to happen with your child. And you know, many of these childs, 15 years later, say, what the hell happened? Who did this to me?
Okay, so if you're keeping track, Trump said that kids go to school and they come back a few days later having had an operation. So he's claiming, like, basically, like, the very basic thing that he's playing off of here is the idea that kids might come out to their parents before they come out to their parents. And that the kid might go to school and be trying out a new name and pronouns at school, and then eventually they tell their parents, right? That's like this big scary thing. We've talked about it in California. California just recently made it to where you are not supposed to, you said parents twice. Oh shoot, hold on. So the teachers, sorry, the Ritalin has worn off. So apparently the teachers can just like trans the kids at school, and then they go home and like now they decide to tell the parents. So sorry, it's late in the day. It's the Wednesday show. The Wednesday show mostly doesn't have the benefits of the ADHD medication that I've been prescribed. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is, like, there is this narrative that has existed previously that, like, oh, these teachers are transing the kids. And I mean, honestly, there is a similar narrative that the parents are transing the kids, but this particular issue is that teachers are influencing kids to be trans, or they're letting them dress a certain way or like do a different thing, and then the parents find out later. Or in California, they just made it to where you're not supposed to, as a teacher, tell the parents something that the kid has confided in you. But this is a step further to say that, like, these public schools, the idea that public schools have the resources, and like, in what situation are they just keeping your kid for several days and you just don't see your kid? See, this is a guy who you can tell has never been involved with his children, because in what situation, except for like a boarding school, are you sending your kid to school and then like not seeing them for several days? But that public schools are giving kids operations, and that's a totally other situation, like where there's all these claims that operations are being done on children. And so first of all, operations are not done on children. They are very rarely done on older teens. But this is just, it's following along the same kind of scaremongering, except that it's dialed up to 100. Like, let's just crank that dial up. Let's take all these kind of, I guess, more mundane or more normalized rhetoric from Republicans, claiming, oh, they're transing the kids, oh, they're doing, they did surgery on a grape, whatever. And then just like crank it up to something completely unbelievable. And of course, this conversation, this little clip that we watched was just one part of the whole conversation. There was like 20 minutes of discussion relating to trans issues. And I'm not necessarily going to go through the whole thing, obviously. But Aaron elucidates that the Elon Musk interview with Jordan Peterson came up, where Musk rants about the woke mind virus supposedly affecting his trans daughter. The Moms for Liberty leader expressed agreement with Musk's remarks. The conversation shifted to Minnesota Governor Tim Walz enacting the, quote, trans refugee bill, which guarantees the state as a safe haven for trans people. Trump said, "That's crazy." And then the Moms for Liberty leader continued raising concerns about, quote, an explosion in the number of people identifying as transgender and referring to the born in the wrong body claim as abusive. Yeah, like I guess I think what they say is that it's abusive to tell a child that they were born in the wrong body. But again, that was like trans people trying to relate the concept to cis people in a way that they understood. The majority of trans people don't feel like, oh my God, I was born in the wrong body. Like, this is just like, how can we make cis people understand the very basic premise of what we're going through? And then the cis people ran with it and they're like, oh my God, I can't believe you're telling children this. Watching his supporters try to defend this statement was honestly sad. They tried saying it was a metaphor or taken out of context, or in most cases, just spewed insults. And I'm just thinking of how sad it is to watch people tie themselves in pretzels for this utter lunatic, like watching victims defend their abusers. Yeah. Like, oh, that's what he explicitly said, but he didn't mean it that way. They're always just trying to wiggle out. Mitternacht and I are here to ask you to hit like on the video. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Subscribe. Click the bell if you feel like it. You don't have to, though. Feel free to check out the other links in the description because I sell merch like this cute tank top. I'm running a GoFundMe to try to move 2,000 miles across the country to a place where I have rights. And I have a Patreon he's smashing his face against my face. Further discussion was prompted where Trump compared school boards to dictatorships, described situations where parents are, quote, screaming for the life of their child, and attributing these conflicts to, quote, transgender and other issues. Moms for Liberty leader expressed concerns about banning the government from funding trans surgeries, to which Trump responded casually, well, you can do anything. The president has such power. Trump also targeted Iman Khalif, who has been labeled as transgender, even though she is not. So Trump is like repeating this false claim about Khalif being trans, going on about trans women in sports, blah, 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 blah. So basically he's trying to jump on the bandwagon of targeting trans people in order to boost his numbers, I guess, in order to boost his campaign numbers. Yeah, I don't get why they're so obsessed with us. The reality is that we are a scapegoat for a fascist takeover. There's always a scapegoat group during these kinds of coups where they have to blame someone and say, oh, we need to steal power and we need to disrupt the balance of powers because this danger is so great, you know? In Nazi Germany, it was Jewish people. The whole, they came after the communists, but I didn't speak out because I wasn't a communist, blah, blah, blah. Like, that is kind of functionally the situation, is they have a lot of different scapegoat groups. It's just whichever one they feel is the most effective that they end up cracking down on the hardest, but they still end up impacting a bunch of other groups. They do this with immigration. Like the idea of immigrants and illegal aliens, quote unquote, that is a scapegoat group as well. They just can only wring so much out of it. Like, honestly, I'm surprised with the recent presidential debate that Trump went on so hard about immigration after, like, that just feels like old hat to me. It just feels like old news. But, like, honestly, it's surprising that he didn't scaremonger more about these groomers and such that, you know, is becoming kind of the topic du jour. And then there's a follow-up article from Aaron that the Moms for Liberty founder is, quote, thankful to Trump's school trans surgery lie. Yeah, and Aaron points out that schools do not have the resources, doctors, or legal authority to provide medical gender-affirming care, much less surgery. When she was asked about the claim, the Moms for Liberty founder Tiffany Justice acknowledged that it was a lie, but said she was thankful to Trump for spreading it. I just saw someone on Twitter responding to it was like a meme about something like this, whether it was a teacher or a parent. I think it was a parent, like, my gosh, Timmy, why don't you just wear a dress? All the other parents have a trans kid and I don't. And someone responded going like, yeah, this is obviously false. And then someone replied to that going, well, yeah, obviously this literally didn't happen, but the spirit of it is right. The spirit of it is on point. And it's like, what the like, you know that this isn't actually happening, but you want to pretend that it's happening because it makes you feel better. Mama Mephistopheles points out it's also a blood libel, a threat, a statement of intent. We're so used to it, but that's still what it is. They call LGBT people child predators because that's the worst thing a human can be, and they want to inflict the punishments that crime deserves on the entire group. They don't compare being LGBT to shoplifting or tax fraud for a reason. Right, yes. They want to make pornography illegal because it's harmful to children, and they want to create jail time for it, and also trans people are porn. And then, like, in Florida, they're equivocating trans people with groomers and child sex criminals. And then they also make it to where it's easier to give sex criminals the death penalty, right? So it's like we're clearly heading in a certain direction. It's not a slippery slope argument. It is what they are setting. They're teeing it up. They're teeing up to be able to come at this with like violent retaliation, basically, against you for just being trans. At a rally, he said this more than once. He said this at another rally following up, saying Kamala supports states being able to take minor children and perform sex change operations, take them away from their parents, perform sex change operations, and send them back home. Can you imagine you're a parent and your son leaves the house and you say, Jimmy, I love you so much. Go have a good day in school. And your son comes back with a brutal operation. Can you even imagine this? What the hell is wrong with our country? So yeah, this is from a more recent rally, and I don't feel like listening to him speak because that's really irritating. And the person who shared these links in the Discord server also shared this. So while we're talking about, oh, all these public schools are supposedly forcing kids to be trans, meanwhile, conversion therapy and public education, this is a commentary from next100.org, written by Levi Bohannon, who is talking about a recent investigative report done by HuffPost, which found that millions of American taxpayer dollars are going to private K-12 schools which advocate for or mandate conversion therapy. And this person was forced to participate in conversion therapy as a child and now works in public education or in education policy. They say, I cannot think of a more clearly heinous, despicable, perverse use of limited public education dollars than to perpetuate fake science and inflict a terrible trauma on LGBTQI plus students through conversion therapy. Because these taxpayer dollars are going to private schools. It's not ideal or frequent, but sometimes it's necessary in order to accomplish certain policies and rules, such as providing services for students with disabilities. Other times it's quite distressing because 29 states and Washington, D.C. have voucher programs, which, despite their deeply racist origins and lackluster outcomes with regard to student performance, also provide public education dollars to private schools. This child, Megan Mishkin, was drawing a still life in art class when she heard her name called over the loudspeaker. She packed up her belongings and headed to the main office, where the school secretary was waiting for her. Everything is going to be okay, sweetie, the secretary said to the high school sophomore. Mishkin is a student at Calvary Christian Academy in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. At the time she tried to remain calm and brace for bad news, the secretary directed her to a room where school leaders waited. The group made about 5 excruciating minutes of small talk before the staff members got down to business, suggesting that Mishkin was broken and in need of fixing, and they hoped that anti-gay counseling could be the solution. This Christian Academy is one of at least 9 private schools that participate in voucher or tax credit programs and appear to push LGBTQ students to attend a form of conversion therapy. HuffPost 2017 found that at least 14% of religious schools in voucher programs advertised anti-gay policies or barred LGBTQ students and staff from admission and employment. HuffPost has found that some of these schools go so far as to push a medically discredited and often harmful treatment on their students in an attempt to change their sexual orientation. Stories of this child's sexuality had spread. She had a girlfriend from another school, and administrators said her classmates' mothers had complained about their daughters having to share a room with her. Huh. Isn't that familiar? Isn't that familiar? This is the thing. All of the transphobia is just recycled homophobia. They're like, oh, we don't want these, these trans-identified males in the bathroom with our kids because they could be being creepy. It's exactly the same thing they used to say about lesbians, and I can't even say they used to say it about lesbians because they're saying it today about a child. This was a crushing, humiliating blow. She had spent months preparing for the competition. Oh, because there was an overnight school trip to a statewide theater competition, only to be told that her peers and their families were afraid of her. She cried and tried to explain that she would never have done anything inappropriate with another student. School administrators laid out her options. The group reminded her that they believe the Bible says homosexuality is wrong. Then they told her she would have to attend counseling to discuss her sexuality if she wanted to remain enrolled at the Christian Academy, period. Michigan is now 21 and going to New York University. Jason Rachels, the head of school at Calvary Christian Academy, told HuffPost that, quote, "Anti-gay therapy is not a process we use or a part of a policy at our school." However, he did not dispute any specific part of Michigan's account, saying, "We exist to serve families with similar values that align with our school's statement of faith. We don't hide our beliefs or encourage anyone to enroll who does not desire the same for their family." So yeah, basically, like, there's all these lies about how public schools are trying to force kids to be trans. Meanwhile, actual, like, taxpayer dollars are going to private schools, which are actually forcing kids to go to counseling, quote unquote, for their aberrant sexual orientation, which I'm sure is bleeding out into, like, also trans people as well. You know, like, let's say your family puts you in a school and then you discover that you're trans when you're like 14 or whatever. And now suddenly, you know, you're going through a counseling to try to change you. HuffPost found at least 8 schools with handbooks that seemed to openly require or encourage some form of counseling for kids experiencing same-sex attraction, which experts say often acts as a euphemistic term for conversion therapy. Of course. Of course. Of course. Yeah, these people should not be allowed anywhere near children. Agreed. I'm out as a lesbian, although actually secretly I'm trans mask, and people still do the whole quote, "I don't want you to be around us while we're sleeping or getting dressed." Yeah, it's really dumb. So I don't know that I have like a point to this. But yeah, it's projection. Yeah. They're like, well, you're doing this bad thing. And I don't actually think that it's bad to try to force kids to be something that they're not, as long as it has to do with forcing them to be, quote, normal, according to my beliefs. Like, according to them, it's not actually bad, for schools to pressure your kid to do something with regards to their sexual orientation. It's only bad if you're forcing them to be trans or gay or whatever, which of course nobody is doing. But they are. They are. Oh, right. Yeah. What I believe is the natural, normal thing that everyone is already, which is why I have to force everyone to be the way that I say they naturally are. Right. This is the thing. When they claim that being straight and being cisgender is normal, and being a masculine man and being a feminine woman, all these things are normal and natural. Why are they putting so much work into preserving those archetypes? Like, why are they having to try so hard? You wouldn't have to put this much work into preserving these structures if they truly were natural and normal and everybody just falls into them by default. You wouldn't have to abuse your little boy for playing with a pink toy if it were true that boys naturally have an affinity for blue and they hate pink, you know? On the very basic level. Yeah, children notoriously reject things you push on them anyway. Thank you to the patrons, especially Bo E, Hapax Legomenon Patient Advocate, Tiago Nascimento, Mersh Rolvag, Sarah A, Jack, Amanda B, Michelle Frateroli, Michelle Winter, Wellington Marcus, Danielle McDonald, Suzanne Maynard, DZXN, Jamie Jam, Nova, Sojo, Past Null Infinity, Elizabeth Bartell, Jericho, Athiet, Desi Quiche, Celeste, Mr. Atheist, Liam Hodgson, Kevin Young, and Ella V. Nobody.